O-Mark, the ego, chose Severance to avoid his pain, and this has allowed his shadow, I-Mark, to be born and to grow. Where O-Mark has turned inward, I-Mark has turned outward, desperate for connection.
At least you'll have a chance at living.
Yeah, but I want to live with you.
Severance imagines a world where identity is deliberately fragmented for corporate efficiency. At its core, the series explores what happens when a person's consciousness is divided into one or more functional roles. Yet, even within this manufactured duality, the boundaries are never entirely secure. Emotion, memory, and instincts resist containment.
I'm just not ready. I'm ready.
The innies are deprived of personal memories, histories, and meaningful agency. Yet, the primary job of the MDR team is an inherently subjective and effective one.
Each category of numbers presents in such an order as to elicit an emotional response in the refiner. Cat 1 numbers, for example, feel a certain way.
However, the refinement process reduces emotional instinct to a mechanical act. Employees are required to feel, but only in ways that serve Lumen's interests. Emotion is permitted, but only when it can become modified and instrumentalized.
I was dusting the old group photos, the ones with PD, and it just made me feel sad. I mean, I don't know if he's at some new job, or drunk on a beach, or dead.
That's enough, please.
One of the clearest examples of this is the wellness sessions. Miss Casey's therapy offers no real emotional depth. It's just another corporate function. She herself, being a severed and repurposed therapist, lacks autonomy and is rendered an instrument rather than a person. The wellness sessions also serve as tests to verify whether the severance barriers are holding. Miss Casey relays details from the outies' lives to see if they trigger any emotional reactions in the innies. For example, she tells I. Irving his outie enjoys the sound of Raider, which is also the name of his dog. There is an overall refusal to facilitate or even just allow emotional catharsis.
I'm sorry, Dylan G. I should have facilitated better.
Lumen's world is strictly utilitarian, from the modernist exterior facade to the only permitted outlet of emotional intensity, which is the selective focused reverence towards care. MDR's team's rewards, the waffle parties, the finger traps, offer shallow pleasures in place of real agency. The absence of meaningful leisure deprives the severed workers of normal coping mechanisms. Milkshakes forced celebrations like the dance party don't support catharsis but only weaponize joy, turning it into a hollow and forced ritual. The MDR handbook says refiners remove impurities from data and reorganize it into its purest form.
How did you feel in the hall? Did you exit any of the rooms feeling despair, fervor, gaiety?
Here's mantra, let not weakness live in your veins, refers to their outie's emotional baggage as the weakness. In the first scenes of season 1 with Ellie, we see the origin of this principle at work. Mark asks Ellie questions to test personal versus general knowledge. She cannot answer questions about her life, but correctly identifies the state of Delaware. She gets a perfect score because the test vets the chip for emotional edge cases that might leak through. This is also why Miss Casey instructs to treat all facts equally, because it makes it easier to detect subconscious emotional responses.
That's 10 points off. You have 90 points remaining.
Points?
Please don't speak.
Everything at Lumen works towards this goal. The testing floor forms the central ground, the core of this hell-like dimension. The severed floor supports it. MDR refines Gemma's consciousness, nurturing mammalians provide the animal sacrifices for the cult-like company, and O&D designs the objects that populate the testing floor's environments. Everything is constantly scrutinized for leak-throughs. Memories are treated like water, constantly at risk of seeping in and flooding minds minds that should remain pure and filtered. In the first episode of the second season, Milchick gives Mark a newspaper with an article about the Baird Creek Bandits, which is a thief who only steals sentimental items and leaves sinks running, causing leaks while people are at work. In episode 6 of the second season, Regabi discusses flooding Mark's chip to accelerate reintegration. The numbers on the MDR work screen drift and float like they're in liquid. An even more direct connection is Irving the Navy and his innie becoming excited and subsequently losing points in a wellness session at a fact about his outie regarding water.
Your outie is splendid and can swim gracefully and well.
After all, Irving is the one outie which seems more advanced in the understanding and active opposition towards Lumen.
Irving, if you wouldn't mind being in back, tall glass of water.
Water imagery is pervasive because Lumen needs to maintain control over the metaphorical flow of its test subjects. Sweet Vitriol gives us the origin story for the idea itself, that of a brilliant former child laborer, possibly inspired by the haze from ether fumes, imagining a way to disassociate from her 10-hour shifts.
Oh, I haven't done that since I was 8.
You ready to man the vat for 10 hours?
Lumen, a corporation which still exploits child labor, adopts this ideal, distorting it through a cult-like vision of a life free of tempers. So what began as a fantasy of liberation becomes a hollow sort of freedom from, well, theoretically whatever you want, achieving an artificial purity, which is an inherently dangerous ideal. Mostly is testing its packaging to mass consumption, whereby Severance becomes the ultimate anesthetic, offering relief by excluding pain and simplifying life.
I'm Devin. Gabby. Thank you for narcotics.
In both season 1 and 2, Mark relies on alcohol, a familiar, less advanced coping strategy. A young, exhausted Cobell uses ether for the same reason. Severance outpaces both substances by offering a clean break. No hangovers, no withdrawals, no discernible traits leaking through.
Oh, you look awful. You look hungover.
But it robs people of wholenessness. It deadens not just pain, but empathy, accountability, and connection. True personhood does require integration of all experiences, including suffering, and Severance prevents that integration.
Okay, look, I'm not going to unsever.
I don't want you to unsever, because that's not a word. Reintegration.
All right, well, whatever.
It freezes people in partial states. At its core, the Severance procedure is radical disassociation made physical, spatial, and procedural. The innie consciousness is essentially a dissociated alter created and maintained by the process, a tool of extreme commodification. Elevators, doors, and transition spaces become passages between reality but also trapdoors into disassociation. The mechanical transition within the elevator marks the point where the anesthetic kicks in or wears off, reflecting how drugs take effect. Practically, Lumen's cold capitalist world sells the idea that to be better, stronger, and purer, one must have a specifically altered type of temperament, one that is devoid of woe, malice, frolic, and dread, one that eventually makes you feel less.
The medical team says your tempers will rebalance quickly.
Good to hear.
Some residual trauma is to be expected after such an ordeal.
What the series is showing you is that feeling, even when difficult or uncomfortable, is essential to our sense of identity and our connection to others. This is extremely relevant at this very moment where, in our reality, we're being sold the narrative that empathy, emotion, even morality is weak. Severance represents this emotional duality a lot through sounds, lightning, colors. Hallmark's fish tank has 2 fishes, one is red and one is blue, divided by a line mirroring the show's dichotomy. Almost immediately there is this association between blue being the one to associate with Lumen and red being the opposite one, the color of disruption. This color motif echoes Ben Stiller's earlier work in The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, where red symbolizes adventure and blue mundane corporate life.
Hi.
Hi.
Do you have any cars available?
Yeah, we have a blue one and a red one.
I'll take the red one.
Lumen's world is bathed in blue, and Omark's house glows in cold blue light. The entire town actually seems filmed through a blue tint. After all, this is a company town, and all of it is clearly oversaw by Lumen. Conversely, red marks moments of passion and defiance. In season 1, there is a super interesting scene where Mark's neutral colored car drives between a red and blue one, visually representing his in-between state at that point in time, which obviously mirrors their narrative as it is unfolding. In season 2, episode 6, Helena meets Omark in a restaurant bathed in shifting reds and blues. The intro reflects these too. Mark's outie wears red pajamas, is in a blue suit, and it's very interesting that at the end of the second season, this changes in the opposite way. Green instead represents the innies and severed spaces. It dominates Lumen's interiors, particularly the MDR office, which recalls grass. I mean, what's the difference, metaphorically speaking, between MDR's team in their office and the goats in their dedicated space? They are comparable in how the company perceives and uses them.
They're fucking animals.
Following this utilitarian mindset, they're both tools.
Am I livestock?
We first see the goats as shadows, just as season 2 opens with a shadow behind the eye mark. There has been an obvious focus on using light and darkness to portray shadows. During the dinner with Phil's, Irving, and Bert, Phil's unsevered face is fully lit, while shadows fall across severed Bert and Irving. And the wine they share, by the way, is called Cabra, Spanish for goat. Episode 4 features Kier's journey. His creation of Dieter, the first innie, whether imagined or real, is an act of disassociation. Kier externalizes his shadow rather than integrating it, locking it away, which is the essence of the severance procedure. In the same episode, the MDR team follows literal shadows, guiding them through a cave, an overt nod to Plato's allegory. The innie's ignorance mirrors the prisoners in Plato's cave, seeing only manipulated shadows of reality.
Looks like a seal?
Why does it look so messed up?
Maybe this is what dead things look like.
In Plato's allegory, the shadows on the cave wall are manipulations of reality, mere imitations of the true world beyond.
This is the tallest waterfall on the planet.
Similarly, we found out that Lumen can construct different realities, and that OMD's role is to curate the objects that supports those realities. In the pilot, Imark asks Ellie, "Who are you?" as a way to ensure that her knowledge of outside and inside reality is null. In the flashbacks, Omark asks Ojama, "Who are you?" for the exact opposite reason, because he's enamored by her way of being, something that is uniquely herself. But if every environment that the innies know is fabricated, Lumen manufactures the only truth that they can comprehend. I mean, is Irving's farewell on the train even real? When we're first introduced to Irving and Raider in the first season, we hear a train hissing in the background. In Woz Hollow, Lumen offers innies a Kier-like enlightenment journey.
I walked into the cave of my own mind, and there I tamed them. Should you tame the tempers as I did mine, then the world shall become but your appendage.
The cave is a metaphor for the mind. Kier's disassociation by creating Dieter parallels the severance chip's implantation. Kier externalizes his immoral impulses, while outies disassociate from what they don't want to do, whether that's flying, delivering children, going to the dentist. But unlike the pursuit of enlightenment, Kier embraces ignorance, and Lumen perpetuates it, because the shadow, meaning the inne, is the part of oneself that the ego, the outie, denies and rejects. This refers to Carl Jung's theory of the shadow self, which is the unconscious part of the self that doesn't correspond with the ego's ideal. The ego is the person you believe yourself to be. It is the you that says, I am. The shadow is the part of yourself that you like to stay hidden, that you like to not be. It has a series of qualities, or tempers that you like to get rid of, despite the shadow doesn't only represent negative qualities but positive ones as well. For example, Lumen is concerned to avoid behavior which they consider childish.
You must eradicate from your essence childish folly. You must grow up.
It goes as far as destroying Miss Wang's only toy once her internship is complete. Most of the innies are seen as less than and are given childish nicknames to reflect that.
We serve here, you child!
Peter becomes Petey, Helena Helly, Margaret Peggy. Granted, this one is from the Lexington letter. Yet we could argue that there is also a type of magic in maintaining a bit of childlike wonder to our lives. Jung emphasized that psychological growth, or individuation, involves confronting and integrating the shadow. For example, Dylan's breaking point comes when he realizes he has a son outside of work, symbolizing a moment of Jungian individuation, when the unconscious, which is his hidden fatherhood, breaks through the barriers imposed by Lumen. This realization challenges his worldview and propels his resistance.
I can get you any perk you want, Dylan. Hey, there's stuff you don't even know about. There's paintball. There's coffee cozies. Dylan, come on. Just say the word and I'll get you a coffee cozy literally right now, Dylan. Come on, man. I want to remember my fucking kid being born!
When Dylan tries to take over, in a way, and proposes to Gretchen, Dylan responds with compassion and understanding. At this moment, his shadow and his ego are more aligned than they've ever been, really.
In the meantime, if I'm being really honest, I guess I like knowing you're there. So, if you want to leave, you can, but I think you should stay.
Because ideally, one would integrate the two parts by doing what's called shadow work.
Everything was like so white.
We're making progress. It's not just waking up on a table, it's human interaction.
The severed floors, which is the innis world, are actually lit, sterile, and artificial, resembling a hyper-controlled conscious mind that denies the shadow. The outis world is dimly lit, moody, suggesting that the outis live in a state of repressed awareness where their shadow, the inni, is completely ignored. The very nature of the severance procedure is basically a Jungian dissociation of sorts, where parts of the shadow self are purposely disconnected and the outwards, outis self, is maintained balanced according to a lack of tempers through a refinement of consciousness. The barriers need to hold, otherwise there would be a bleed through the active consciousness, which is what Irving actively tries to do when he ensures to remain awake and burn into his mind the image of the testing floor. Irving often has this seep through specifically because he does it all. After all, the dream state is one of weaknesses that can show more than what we see when we're awake. Thematically, consciousness, memories, dreams, reflections, shadows are all part of an identity and a reality formation that is the foundation of a lot of introspective work. After all, Carl Jung's book is called Memories, Dreams, and Reflections, or MDR for short. But there is a flaw to the concept of severance, because Petey's divorce likely led him to severance, but his longing for his daughter led him to regabi and reintegration. Aymark doesn't consciously remember Gemma, that's obvious, yet in a wellness session, Cobell lights Gemma's candle and Aymark draws the tree where Olmark believes his wife died. These feelings persist, leaking through somewhere.
You carry the hurt with you. You feel it down there too. You just don't know what it is.
But to Lumen, innis become non-people.
I am a person. You are not.
Occupying spaces which are transformed into non-places, according to Auger's definition of it. Their identities are stripped away, leaving them as functionaries within an environment designed purely for utility. The innis are commodities, consumable resources that fuel Lumen's corporate machinery.
You shouldn't let them have a funeral. It makes them feel like people.
The critique of capitalist exploitation is overt. People are treated as products, as sustenance, for a system that serves the outies, which are the more important, the more real versions of themselves. This metaphor is embodied when I. Irving, growing disillusion, smashes a deviled egg on the pages of Lumen's employee handbook. After all, the eggs are coveted AF.
Yeah, the egg bar is coveted as fuck.
Lumen's workforce and everyone adjacent then becomes a form of nourishment for this world. In a way, people are food. Earlier in the pilot, we see Rickon and his pseudo-intellectual friends fawn over a dinner party that serves no actual food. I must say, as an Italian, that was insulting to me. When Rickon tells Mark, "We really enjoyed you tonight,"
I think people really enjoyed you tonight, Mark.
the line frames Mark as the evening's sustenance. They consumed rather than the guest. In contrast, when everyone leaves and Devon makes Mark a sandwich, that is a simple act of offering real nourishment that becomes an authentic gesture of love. The parallels between innies and consumables run throughout the show. Irving's melon head dessert, the goats being raised with care and attention only to be sacrificed at the right time.
Like, did you grow me as food and that's why I have no memories?
Like the goats, like food, innies exist to be used in a service of a higher purpose that they neither understand nor benefit from.
The work is mysterious and important, and we deal with the uncertainty it brings us in the way that Kier would have wanted.
The innies function like computers. Their lives are locked in a perpetual present, a state of psychological stasis, being woken up when needed. Their entire existence is preordained. They wake up, work, and shut down, resembling a deterministic machine.
If he gets out, we're dead! They're gonna turn us off like fucking machines! You've seen them do it.
The innies' daily reset robs them of narrative continuity. Each day is an isolated bubble without growth or progression.
So it's tomorrow now?
Yeah. Well, it's Monday.
A weekend just happened.
Yeah.
I don't even feel like I left.
Yeah, that's how nights and weekends feel here.
Like nothing.
The elevator serves as a physical and metaphysical threshold between these fragmented existences. It's the sole conduit between the severed floor and the outside world, a space of transition that allows one consciousness to cease and another one to resume as the doors slide open. The elevator institutionalizes this liminality, enforcing a permanent bifurcation of self. Is the ultimate instrument of bad fate, as Sartre would argue, allowing employees to abdicate responsibility for their other selves. The severed exist in a perpetual threshold, never arriving anywhere. There's no past, no real future, just an eternal during.
So I'll never leave here.
You'll leave at 5. Well, actually, they stagger our exit, so 5:15. But it won't feel like it, not to this version of you anyway.
Do you have a family?
You'll never know.
Their bodies become liminal spaces, perpetual transitions embodied in elevators and automatic doors.
And then Lumen.
Yes.
And they make their doors in-house. It's fucking hubris.
These concepts find a parallel in the Twilight Zone episode After Hours, which the 9th episode of the 2nd season of Severance is named after. In this specific episode, Marsha White's elevator ride to the inaccessible ninth floor isolates her from the ordinary shopping experience below. The ride initiates her disorientation, leading to the revelation that she isn't human, but a mannequin given temporary life. The elevator becomes a portal between her manufactured existence and her fleeting human identity. Her journey back down leaves her fragmented until she's forced to confront the truth of who she really is.
Why, yes. I was looking for a gold thimble. A gift from my mother.
To the best of your memory, what is or was the color of your mother's eyes?
Beyond its literal function, the elevator operates as a psychological metaphor for Marsha's journey of self-discovery. When she ascends to the 9th floor, she unknowingly steps into a liminal space where a real identity resides. And when she descends back into the ordinary world, her memory remains clouded, reinforcing the idea that the elevator acts as a bridge between two states of being. The golden thimble she buys acts as a catalyst for her awakening. It represents the last thread of her constructed humanity, the final tie to the illusion she had lived in.
I'm looking for a gold symbol.
The significance of the golden thimble lies in its function as a symbol of both creation and limitation. It suggests the idea of something made, fashioned, molded, and given purpose, much like Marsha's herself. But it also hints at protection from harm, a boundary between the self and the dangerous reality of the needle's point. Once she rediscovers who she is, the protection falls away and she must confront the truth. Ultimately, Marsha's journey is not one of horror, but one of acceptance. A rite of passage from ignorance to awareness, or one could say enlightenment. This reflects the same journey that the Innis are going through since the first season.
As if
what, Marsha?
As if we were like the others. Like the outsiders. Like the real people.
On a broader level, Severance is about the illusion of control in transitionary states.
I heard that some of them are so deluded they don't even know they're victims.
The severance procedure itself is an artificial attempt to create a clean break between work and life, pain and comfort, illusion and reality, but instead it creates a permanent liminal state. Two halves of a person, neither whole, neither truly separate. The characters are not moving forward nor backward, they're just looping in this in-between. I mean, the epicenter of Lumen's propaganda is literally called the perpetuity wing, to be forever fixed in time.
Come now, children of my industry, and know the children of my blood.
The perpetuity wing is not a celebration of legacy, but a tomb. It's a place where time stops and individuality is embalmed in service to an eternal corporate machine. Time itself becomes another tool of control. And so every character, Inni and Outie, is caught in a transitional space that they can't escape. Physically, emotionally, morally, they're wrapped in a system that offers no answers and deepens instead the dissociation as capitalist system do. The show invites the audience in this in-between world through Mark in season 1. His drive to and from work, for example, is often highlighted, and this is the constant transition between the two identities. The severed floor is deliberately illegible, with a disorienting layout preventing the formation of any concrete sense of direction or location. The sterility of Lumen's interiors, with their uniform desks and lack of personal items, exemplifies what Marc Auger describes as known places, which are spaces that lack identity and exist primarily to enforce function rather than individuality. Auger's theory emerged in his 1992 book, Non-Places, Introduction to an Anthropology of Supermodernity, where he discusses how contemporary society is increasingly dominated by spaces that prioritize functionality over meaning. These spaces are meant to fulfill a very specific and impersonal function, often the production of labor, without fostering any sense of social or emotional connection.
Your best friend left this for you, and you don't give a shit.
These known places are defined by their purpose: transport, commerce, convenience, etc. And there are places like shopping malls, hotel rooms, railway stations, parking spaces, chain restaurants. Yet the Innis resist and eventually rebel to this functional-only status that has been applied to them.
Let's burn this place to the ground.
And they use that same space around them to discover purpose and forge personal connections. The first example we see of this being Petey mapping these very same spaces and engaging in an act of resistance, transforming an environment meant to disorient into one he can navigate with purpose.
I thought we weren't supposed to make maps.
A photo, which is meant to be a token of forced corporate camaraderie, instead becomes a vessel for knowledge. Ellie uses a part of the shredder, the same one that Mark initially used to destroy Petey's map, to leverage her exit to that same place. Then Irving, during his final moments, exploits an office poster with a trite motivational cliche to have Dylan find the indications to the testing floor.
Just remember, hang in there.
The waffle party, which is meant to be a dehumanizing spectacle, is instead transformed into an opportunity for Dylan to stage an act of defiance by triggering the overtime contingency. In doing so, he weaponizes a corporate incentive against the system itself. Mark and Ellie's entire love story is developed on the severed floor amongst those same illegible corridors and plain desks. Bert and Irving's final goodbye happens at the railway station. So for almost the entire run of the show, we saw the characters progressively reclaiming their oppressive environments.
Let's find out what's for dinner.
And subverting more and more the known places in an effort to find meaning and break through.
We can all see the outside, find out who we are.
At a certain point during season 2, and especially at the very end of it, Innis demand to live their lives regardless of what's outside, regardless of having the possibility to break through. They don't fight the lumen demarcation between fake and real anymore, but they welcome it. Only they welcome it as a reality, not an illusion.
You know, nightmare is the wrong word, actually. Because we find ways to make it work, to feel whole, which is why what you're asking scares me. You know, because whatever this life is, it's all we have.
Jung once wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Instead of achieving Severance's reintegration or Jungian's individuation, Mark's dual selves are now in direct opposition, in obvious conflict.
We are in this together. Can't you just trust me? No.
Mark, the ego, chose Severance to avoid his pain, and this has allowed his shadow, Mark, to be born and to grow. Where Mark has turned inward, Mark has turned outward, desperate for connection.
At least you'll have a chance at living.
Yeah, but I want to live with you.
And eventually, the grief, the rage, the love, and the need Mark suppressed emerged and finally exploited in Mark. In season 2's final moments, as he confronts both his ego representation, Gemma, and his shadow representation, Ellie, he ends up making the selfish choice of staying with Ellie while the screen just bursts of red. The internal disruption is complete. When I say selfish about Mark here, I don't mean it as judgment. After all, Mark has been selfish throughout this whole process too. He began reintegrating for Gemma, not for Mark. And during their conversation in the cabin, while he does show sympathy towards Mark, it's clear that his own life and love story matters more than whatever future his in him might have. Frustrated, he turns to Harmony for help, seeing Mark as a child who can be reasoned with, ironically echoing the way Lumen has always spoken about and treated Innis and employees alike.
Devin! He's a fucking child. He won't listen.
But Mark's grievances aren't unreasonable. He exists. His love for Ellie is just as real. However, Mark doesn't seem to care that in saving Gemma, he's effectively sacrificing other Innis, most notably Miss Casey, someone he's actually met.
Yeah, there must be something we can do.
Why do you care what happens to me?
Even with what little they gave us, these are our lives. No one gets to just turn you off.
You're nice, Mark.
Don't they deserve to live too, just as he and Ellie do?
You have to go right now. Go.
Where?
Come on, you gotta go right now!
And so, as Young said, the shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality, for no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort. The Marxist conflict is as much about control as it is about self-definition. Aurimark wants to contain the chaos, to push Imark back into a non-existent or at least secondary role, while Imark wants to assert his personhood, to demand recognition. The dynamic reflects the central struggle of individuation. I am is no longer a simple statement of identity, it's a contested ground.